Namaste everyone. I wanted to do a video on the upcoming transits for Friday the 19th, 2020. This holiday that's coming up is called Juneteenth. It's a holiday that's actually been around for a very long time and is just coming into the awareness of many, but it holds a very strong energetic pattern or astrology tied to that day, and I wanted to discuss that so we can all learn how to collectively move forward together and use these powerful energies and the wisdom that we can get from astrology to help us all build the kind of future and collective that we wish to have moving forward. When I did this synastry chart, I used the date of the original Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865, and then I crossed that with the date for tomorrow, June 19th, 2020. The way that I'm going to go in order of these alignments or transits is I'm going to go through the most powerful ones and then we'll work our way back into the ones that are a little less strong, but all the ones that I've used are within 1 degree or so they're very strong transits. The first transit that I want to discuss is Mercury conjunct the moon. This transiting day is going to be bringing closure to any failures in communication and bringing about conversations that will create a unified and collective path forward. Juneteenth is a time to share thoughts and feelings in a positive way and a proactive way. It is a day to connect in a way that is compassionate and understanding. Conversations between two will bring more significance than with the masses. In other words, sitting down and having an open dialogue with someone will bring exponentially more benefit than just posting something on social media. You may even find that a bond or a conversation that you have with someone goes beyond words into a deeper understanding, almost as it's a psychic experience. It's a time to get very honest and to get very deep. And all of this is so we can clarify and genuinely move forward. The second transit is Uranus conjuncting the sun. When we truly realize that there is no self and no other, beautiful miracles are possible. They're bound to happen. Think of the energy of a miracle. It's abundant and it takes so many synchronicities to get to that moment. Everything has to line up perfectly. We're often reminded in life that sometimes these hard events and hard aspects and hard situations come to teach us. And we can look back and see that it took that tough experience in order to help us to grow, to become the person that we're meant to be in the present. The path of miracles is upon us, and it's time to see things in a new light. It's time to honor each other person as one. The world is our oyster, and it's up to us to create what we want to from here. Uranus is the planet that brings forth technology, science, environmental remedies, healing modalities, to name a few. There's many avenues for adventure. Let's walk hand in hand together. The next aspect that I want to talk to is Pluto semi-squaring the sun. This is talking about a time that has really come as a point of fate. It's a life-changing event. It's a place and a time where we all want to find peace and solidarity. Yes, there's always going to be a few bad apples in the bunch. You can't do anything about that. And it takes all kinds to really generate this planet. We all knew when we incarnated that we came here for a challenge. You know, I always say that the soul is like a teenage ego, that it comes in with the best of intentions, thinking that it can take on or change, that the soul can change the human aspect, or it can take on any challenge at all. So it's time to merge that tenacity that we have as a soul and take it into action now that we're here. We're building this new collective, and we want this world to be one that is almost creating a heaven on earth. Even in a hero's journey, the adversary is there to help teach the hero that he had the power all along. The same is true for us. There have been and there will always continue to be battles. Oppression and freedom are major things for all people on the planet entirely. So why is this an issue? Why do we continue to have this need for freedom, and we also have oppressors? If we begin to look back into the past, it would probably surprise you. This oppression and freedom idea that we've been working on and struggling with and challenged to overcome has been going on much longer than anyone can quite imagine. You know, it goes back as far as the Sumerian text. There's been slavery in almost every country, and almost every ethnicity of person has been a slave at one point at a time. So we're really beginning to scratch the surface. And the deeper that we go, the more healing that's going to be possible for everyone on the planet. What we think are modern time issues aren't actually modern at all. The issue of power, money, slavery, sexuality, it goes back so far into our consciousness and into our cellular memory. It's the memories of our ancestors. It's the memory that is somewhere deep within all of our physical bodies. And that pain is very much real. That hunger for power that some people have often comes from a place of insecurity. And we know this. And we also know that a rose never needs to say that it's pretty. So we use the knowledge of the ancestors. We are using that knowledge. We need to dive deeper in, and diving deeper in will help create a lineage of healing. Because when we heal ourselves, we heal in both directions of our lineage, the ones that were here before us and the ones that are yet to come. To each their own. Saturn squaring Pluto. To each their own is a Latin phrase. It's expressing the importance of every person deserving their share, staying in their own lane, contributing their unique gifts to society as a whole, and trusting that justice will be served. It's just as applicable today as it was when it was first taught by philosophers like Socrates around 2,000 years ago. Why is it taking so long to learn the lesson? I don't know. But relationships are challenging. I do know that. And so we have so many opposing views. And I often find myself kind of in the middle. I'm quite the observer. And so I'm seeing these opposing views on both sides of it. Everybody has their own idea and their own beliefs, and some are more strongly stated than others, and some are a little bit more quiet and understated. But the one thing that I know is that this earth is made up of many, many different cultures. And there's each person that has the nature and the nurture of what they've experienced. We can never really put ourselves in the shoes of another, and sometimes we wouldn't want to. So when we take this and we apply it into our life, we can begin to understand that I don't need to agree with you for you to be a part of my life. As long as we're not crossing a boundary, if we disagree, then that's fine. You have your beliefs and you have the reason for them, and I have my beliefs and I have the reason for them. It's important to choose to see, instead of how we're different, to look at the things that we have in common. Because if we start to look for commonalities, then this is what this Saturn squaring Pluto is teaching us. Seeing these commonalities is going to bring us all closer together. We don't need to be divided. We need to stand together. The next transit is the Sun conjuncting the North Node. The Sun is shining a light on the path that was meant to be always for the future. The world is changing, and we are creating history one day at a time, and sometimes that path is not the easiest, but it's definitely worth it. This is an important day that marks the evolvement from living in the past to creating the future. It is a day that was truly written in the stars. The light shining upon this holiday so brightly for the first time in history is exactly the meaning of this transit. It was a day like today that is given to us to have confirmation, and it's confirmation to the ones that are faithful for the changes that are coming right now. They're happening now. It's not something anymore that's coming into the future. We're actually a part of this time in the present. So no matter what has been or what will be, we know that this day was always meant to be. It is truly destiny. The next aspect that I want to speak on is the North Node trining the Sun, which again, we're talking about the path that we were always meant to take forward, and it's trining the Sun, so the Sun is again shining light. And then we have the Sun conjuncting the Sun, so the Sun in the place at the time of the original Juneteenth, and the Sun in the place on Friday 19th, 2020 are actually in a conjunction together, and that's a very positive aspect as well. When I thought about this transit, this song popped into mind. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. What is the meaning of light? When we talk about it from a spiritual point, we can talk about it from a religious aspect. We can talk about it when you light a candle for a loved one, when you put a candle in your window at Christmas time. It's a symbol of inviting, creating warmth, right? Sharing knowledge, shedding light on the truth, inviting one in. So the question here is, how are we shining our light? As wounded healers, we often go through a challenging aspect to heal the cellular or emotional or physical traumas in our body, mentally, physically, whatever have you. And we do that so that we can then be a light. We're actually removing the cellular damage and replacing that cellular damage with light and love, creating a lighter way of being, right? No pun intended. So how are you shining your light? Are you expressing these qualities? And are you expressing empathy to others? It's a time to create peace and harmony. Maybe asking someone today to do something together. If it's just cooking a meal or singing a song or lighting a candle for a loved one that has passed. Whatever you need to do just to create that bond with two. And a quote from the Bible, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. So really using, and that's Matthew 18:20, really using this energy to create something with someone, create that special bond. Because, you know, we have a saying, and it's a light, lighting a light, lighting a light. It's not done by, you know, expressing so harshly our ideals, beliefs, or values, but that we can be a spark for someone else to create a light for their own self and to give it to another. Find the miracle in union. The next aspect is a little bit of a tongue twister. It's Jupiter Sesquis square Uranus. That is very difficult for me to say with a southern accent. You know, but the point of this one, a Sesquis square is a point where it's a challenging aspect, but it's a challenging aspect that's meant to bring the betterment, okay? So when we're talking about planet Jupiter, which is expanding, and Uranus, which has all these attributes of the future technologies and moving into environmental causes and, you know, really healers being known and valued for their work. So the way that I really thought about this was a saying that my grandfather said, and he always told me, Shelley, you'll get more flies with honey than you will with vinegar. And, you know, he would say that to me all again, because I was a little bit of a smart mouth teenager at times, imagine that. But when we have these strong personalities and beliefs and we're going at it with another person, it creates a collision. It can be almost like fireworks, right? But sometimes the energy of the firework is exactly what we need to create exact change. We want to expand with Jupiter these new beliefs that are coming from Uranus. So just in my own experience, I work, you know, and I have a lot of friends from different places, different cultures, different races. If I expected everyone to believe like me, to look like me, to act like me, then there would probably be no one left, right? Because a lot of the ideas and the way that I am is very unique to myself. So there's just no way possible that I can surround myself with people that are just like me. Nor would I want to, because I would probably get on my own nerves. But with that being said, having diversity in relationships really means allowing interdependency. It means that you can have your own experiences, you can have your own thoughts, you can have your own beliefs, and that's okay with me. When it's something that I disagree with, and sometimes if someone says something offhanded, often I'll look to see where is that coming from. If it's a person that I'm working with, and we can dive deep into that. Where's the root of that, right? What's going on? Where is that pain, that anger, that frustration coming from for you personally? Or is it coming from something in the collective? And either way is fine, because we all have this deep within ourselves and we all need to bring it to the surface. These emotions can be used as a catalyst or a bridge, right? So when we find this emotion, we can usually find the root of the issue. So whatever comes up, we need to dive in and just accept and have a place of holding space for another that might be coming up with all of this pain and frustration. We wouldn't go to a child that is hurt and scold them for hurting themselves or for being hurt by another. So certainly in the same way, we don't want to do that within the collective for our own brothers and sisters. The next aspect is Pluto sextiling Mercury. So a sextile gives us an opportunity for growth. Pluto, bless its little planet heart, people argue over whether it's a planet or not even anymore. So you can think of it as a tough and tumble kind of planet. It can take it, right? And Mercury is the planet of communication. So we're going to use this energy to change a perception, okay, for what is best for the personal path of you and another. Now, Pluto, in all of its toughness, is still a very strong staple in astrology. And even though many people discuss and banter and even argue about it, it's very important. And it's important because it brings about the inner work that we all need to do. It's the planet that shows us the growth that we need to do within. So it's a great day to talk Mercury about the growth that we want to do from within. It's a great day to talk our way into an awakening. The next aspect is Uranus, Quincunx, Saturn. So a quincunx is often where we find ourselves between a rock and a hard place. So this is the darkness of Saturn that not really expansion, but kind of explosive and all of a sudden thing that can happen with Uranus, meaning that we could come into some tough discussions and maybe find ourselves looking again at these differences. You know, it's just like I was saying before, we wouldn't take someone that is in pain and beat it into the pain. So it's really going to be a place in order to heal this, to hold space for another one, and to recognize that you cannot control anyone else's behavior or their beliefs. We can only work on ourselves. And as we work on ourselves and we focus on our goals, right, we're going to be able to find a way to be independent and also work together. There's a sort of interdependency that is also coming to the surface during this time. Not everything is about what's going on in the collective. A lot of it's working on ourselves. There's been a lot of codependency. We've talked a lot about narcissism in the last few years. So it's really about how not blaming or finding fault with those around us or with ourselves, and just looking deeper within to create the true healing that we need to do so that we can find that path forward. And then on the other hand, with the other, holding space for that person to work through and process their own beliefs and pain and things that they're going through so that we can all come to a place together. The next aspect is Mars semi-squaring the North Node. So we have Mars, which is the planet of action, but also the planet of war, and it's squaring off with the path forward. So this can be turned into a positive, but again, often the positive way isn't laid out with golden bricks before us. We have to work to get to that place of positivity and the place that we want to be for the future now. So it's up to us to decide. We know one thing, that free will exists. Yes, there are fated moments and fated events, of course, but in between that, we have an exercise of free will that we get to decide whether we're going to react or respond, and what we're going to do with the events as they unfold. A good way to take this into a tangible action is to find some type of work, something that you can really put your mind and body and effort into, right? So we're using that energy of Mars in order to create something positive. It's also a warning not to engage or put yourself into any situation whatsoever where there's a possibility of violence. And we know there's a lot of different events going on, so we would want to find an event where we know that there's a level of safety. We definitely don't want to be out late at night where anything can pop off, okay? So just taking care of yourself and being safe. The undercurrent here is that there has been their share of difficulties around this holiday in particular. And the reason why we haven't even heard about it in like 140 years is, one of the issues, the other issue is that undercurrent of why did it take 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation for the message to get to Galveston, Texas. So that's a little bit of where this energy, and these two planets are showing that. There's different stories. We don't know if they got murdered. We don't know what happened, but there was some type of warlike energy, some type of violence, some type of danger, something that happened, and the reasoning why this has kind of been put under the surface. But with the North Node being there meant that it was always going to come out to the open for the whole collective to understand and to know about it. And that's where we are today. The next aspect is Lilith squaring Jupiter. So some people might know who Lilith is, some might not. So it's a little bit controversial, but it's a very important aspect in astrology. Lilith was known as Adam's first wife. So there, if you don't know, you got to start looking up some stuff because you'll be fascinated. On the other hand, in astrology, she's there to show us where the wound around the feminine energy is. She's also the protector to help us work through the shadow work. And when I talk about shadow work, I'm talking about suppression, oppression, abuse, lies. It's going to be bringing all this into the present so that it can finally be worked on truly. So there's layers and layers here. And everything that we're going through is just lifting another layer and lifting another layer. So if you haven't heard of Lilith, it's okay. It might just be something new that needs to be uncovered for whatever the purpose is in your life. And you can use astrology by looking at your chart and looking at where Lilith is in your chart to see where some of those oppressive, suppressive, wounds might be for yourself personally. We're really just getting started, and Jupiter is a great place to start. So this is bringing up those things in our own psyche. So we need to talk about these issues. We need to uncover, we need to examine to really find a true place of healing. And let Lilith help support you. There's negative things that have been said about her, but what we're learning now more than ever is all the negative things. Why are they being said about these people? Why is this woman being demonized? It's the same way of why are healers and doulas, people that are in the healing community, male and female both, but that expression of healing and nurturing is ultimately feminine. Why were they considered witches? So it's a little bit of this, like, let's uncover the truth. Let's, take off the blindfold so that we can see the truth of the matter at hand and who's really the oppressed and who's really been doing the oppression. The next one is a combination of two aspects, and they're both around 1 degree. So we have Saturn squaring off with Jupiter, and then we have Jupiter squaring off with Mars. So we have a lot of energy moving in this. And the first thing that popped into my mind was to do the right thing. And I immediately thought of the movie with Spike Lee. And so this whole chart is actually written out, and I'll put the link below, but there's a quote, and it's by Radio Raheem, and he says, "Let me tell you the story of the right hand and the left hand. It's a tale of good and evil." And that video is actually on YouTube if you want to look it up, because it's really the whole essence of these two transits put together. So we have strong bonds that are possible with the help of Saturn and Jupiter. Saturn has a reputation for bringing a little bit of darkness, Jupiter, the equality and the light, and Mars we know is associated with war and oftentimes brutality, and that can bring some tension or aggressive communication. One of the aspects around here is authenticity has to be proven, right? If you can't just take someone's word for it all the time, especially when they've hurt you over and over and over again. So there's an edge of caution surrounding that trust and the authenticity of trust, and that's happening in our community, and we're, that's playing out on the main stage right now. Trust has to be developed, and anything that's worth doing is worth doing right, and that's where I'm coming in to do the right thing. So the aspect that I was really thinking of for this is the movie, Do the Right Thing. And in the movie, and why it's come up actually is really interesting, because the storyline is very similar to what is playing out right now with George Floyd, and the same type of oppression and racial tensions. It's something that was made in a movie in 1989, and it's actually happening now again. So again, we can see this link of times, and actually I guarantee if you go and do the astrology of that movie's release with the day of George Floyd, you're going to find some interesting correlations. But basically, I'm just going to sum up the movie for those of you that haven't seen it. If you haven't, I highly suggest it. It's definitely a movie that can spark a good dialogue about things, and what does it take for us to do the right thing, and when can that kind of be weighed? Like, we can try to do the right thing all the time, and then we're pushed up against the wall and we react, and is that reaction always something negative, or is it something that's meant to happen? And that's very much the undercurrent of what is happening and playing out. And so actually, I'm not going to go through the whole movie. If you want to, I did a brief synopsis in the write-up, so if you want to go ahead and read through that, or just watch the trailer or watch the movie, I would highly suggest it. And then think about, how we're still tackling those problems and issues today. It's obvious that racial tensions are so prominent for so many of us, right now. And we need to realize where that's coming from, if it's coming from somewhere within our own selves and our own psyche, or is it coming from an external force, and just weighing that, and understanding. But a couple of questions here is, what happens when there's so much enthusiasm but no harmony? Okay, so we can be very enthusiastic about something, but if we lack that harmonic part of action, then we create chaos. In the movie, the part of just being stubborn, like just bucking heads constantly, what is that going to get us? And what happens when we start to express ourselves from a place of a lack of understanding and compassion? And how can we change these into something positive? So, we need to learn to do the right thing and to understand what that is. And sometimes the right thing is to see things from another person's perspective, and instead of clashing and butting heads, that we're holding space to listen and to see where everyone's coming from, so that we can really take out our own biases and our own fears and look at them and allow another person to do the same thing, so that we can take this whole discord of racism and turn it into a new harmonic reality for everyone. The next aspect is the moon semi-squaring Mars. So we have the moon shining light, it's bringing emotions, and we have Mars, that harder aspect again, and we have that semi-square, so it's really going through the tough time to get to the place that we are today. We know, going back that, like I was saying before, the Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, it took 2 years for that message to get there. And once it got there, it was kind of like these people, these slaves, were the last to know. And so they immediately started searching out relatives. They started leaving if they could. Basically what it meant was they were free, that they needed to be paid, but what exactly did that mean? And then there was the aspect that, it wasn't just like la-di-da, I'm free. There was still a lot of oppression and warlike energy that was still happening at that time. But on the other hand, there were all of a sudden these gatherings and basically cookouts between families that were separated for such a long time, and so there was a point of celebration and rejoicing, And that's the part that we need to bring in. You know, we know that this has been a long battle. We know that there can be battles still to be fought and won moving forward, but this is an impetus. And this day, again, I can't stress enough how important this day is, and that it's written literally in the stars. It was a day that was always going to come to fruition. And we need to understand that when we start to really dig deep, you know, like there's a lot of people talking about white slavery, you know, and that hasn't even scratched the surface yet, and it's not something that even needs to be done yet, because we're here now and we need to deal with what's going on, you know, now. And then once this is healed, we can start to progress, and we'll get to everything in its own time. So there's plenty of battles there, and as we keep uncovering and digging deep, we're going to find so many truths, and that's where this commonality between people is going to really start to become apparent, and that we're all working together. And then if you want to know more about this holiday, if you haven't heard about it, or you know, you just heard it passingly in the media, you know, you can go to Juneteenth.com, and there's the history. There's a nice poem on there, and you know, it really gives a great understanding of the path moving forward. And I just would suggest, you know, the more knowledge, the better, and it will help deepen your understanding of what's, you know, really going on, and to be supportive in any way that you can. So the last aspect that I wanted to discuss today is Chiron conjunct Neptune. So when we talk about Chiron, if you are not certain who Chiron is, he was the half man, half monkey in Greek mythology. And the story is that when he was born, that his mother abandoned him at the very sight of him. And in astrology, it represents the core wound that each of us comes in with. So if you look at your astrology chart, it's very interesting to see that deeper core wound, which all of us have. So if you haven't done that, I highly suggest it. When we're talking about Neptune, we're talking about a level of spirituality and healing through spirituality. And part of all of this that came up, one of the things was forgiveness. And forgiveness is something that we all have, you know, to struggle with, and that we're all working on doing in our own life for those core wounds, because every single person has wounds. Every single person has wounds that they've incarnated with. So forgiveness is a big topic of how do we forgive oppressors? How do we forgive the people that hurt us? How do we forgive when people continue to hurt us? So Sadhguru gives a great lesson on forgiveness, and it's available on YouTube as well. And he's a modern mystic, and one of these lessons was really life-changing for me personally, and it really changed my mindset around the idea of forgiveness. And the concept, basically, it relates back to an old Buddhist concept of when we hold on to anger and resentment, and we're holding that for another person, right? We want to say, here's all my anger and frustration. You take it. It's all directed at you. And then that person says, no, I don't want that. You know, you can keep that. And then we drink that ourselves. It's just us who is carrying around the anger and frustration. It's really not affecting the other person that we're so angry and frustrated. So, you know, we always talk about in Buddhism, even yoga, is like that anger and frustration is a poison that you don't want to keep. You know, you don't want to hold on to these feelings because it does hurt you and not the other. But oftentimes we need another's acceptance. We need their support in our life, sometimes to be happy or to be peaceful, especially if it's family members or close friends or coworkers. And the truth is that we need people to cooperate with us, but there's plenty of people who just don't want to cooperate. So what do you do about those that don't want to? You know, what can you do about it? Well, there's nothing you can do about it. So that's the whole point. Like, don't hold on to this. If you can't change a person, you can't change them. It's just creating more strife in your own mind to keep trying to change or thinking about if they can change. You know, you have to understand that people are going to do what they're going to do. So the idea around forgiveness that Sadhguru teaches is that in order to forgive someone, you must first condemn them, blame them, persecute them. So there's something like, you did this and you need to ask for my forgiveness, or, you know, I just feel like I can't forgive them because they did this. There's some aspect of blame there, right? That we've already blamed that person. But this is that simple mistake in thinking because we've expected too much of that person, right? So that's how we got angry, because we expected them to do or act or be in a way that maybe we would ourselves, or that we just expected them to be. So either way, it's not happening. So now we're angry about that, right? But it comes from that root of expectation. You know, there's this saying that the root of disappointment is in expectation. The root of disappointment is in expectation, meaning that oftentimes we expect so much from another, and when they can't reach that or complete that for us, then we end up being disappointed. So the way that we're going to work through that is that we're not going to hold others to a higher standard than we hold ourselves. We're not going to expect more from others than we're willing to do or offer ourselves. And we're going to find this acceptance of people for the path that they're on, and understanding that there's so many people in the world that really want to be cooperative, to work together, to build this new earth and this new way of living together in unity, and that you can't do anything about the people that don't. So instead of focusing any energy towards those that are not willing to participate, focusing the energy towards the people that do want to be a part of this, that do want to connect and to grow and to be there and hold space. That's where we need to shift our focus from this point forward. So as always, I love you. I'm here for you. If you need to discuss, if you need to unpack anything with me, I'm always available, and I look forward to celebrating with you, and I just hope for all the best for all of you, and just know that you're loved. Namaste. And I just wanted to remind you that I am putting the link towards the written out aspects down below, so you can check that out on my blog, and I thank you for watching.